Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. We're going to be big, we're going to be strong, and we're going to be confident because today we're talking about cedarwood. How are you, Liz?
I don't feel confident. I feel quite nervous. I feel like it's quite a responsibility to try and explain what's all the difference between all of these cedarwoods and all the different things like that. So while I love cedarwood, and I do have some here to try and deal with my nerves, but I feel quite nervous about this one.
Well, first of all, I'm quite surprised that we've done over 50 episodes and we haven't got to cedarwood because it is, for me, it's a mainstay. I would definitely use cedarwood every single week. But, and it's probably a good oil if you are feeling nervous to work with as well. And we'll cover that as we go along. But, well, you're already detecting my first question for you was, how do we tell the difference between different cedars? There's one cedar that I work with, and I don't think it's a real cedar when you look at its Latin name, which is that Juniper Virgin. Oh, you're gonna have to correct me on this one.
Virginiana,
That's it. Yeah,
Virginiana,
yeah,
yeah. So Virginian cedarwood, or sometimes Texan cedarwood. Is that right?
yeah. I've not normally heard it called Virginian. Yeah,
Yeah. So cedarwood Virginian is what I call it. Yeah. So, but yeah, you're quite right. It's not a cedar. And the answer is that apart from looking at the Latin name, I don't know. Over the years, I've questioned it a lot. Like I thought, well, maybe it's because they've all got cedrine in. But when I've looked, actually, the true cedar ones don't actually have that much cedrine in them. So no, I've come to the conclusion it's because they have fragrant woods,
mm.
and that they used as burnt offerings. And so probably I would say because we're jumping way ahead, but there's lots, as you say, there's lots of different trees that are used as cedars. The only true cedars are cedarwood deodara, and also Atlas cedarwood that I can think of. They are Cedrus genus from the pine family, Pinaceae family. The rest are cupressus, so they belong to the cypress family, but they're usually juniper. So, I mean, that's just so confusing. But the important thing to know is that they have smelly wood. And the word cedar itself comes from the Greek word tower. And if you look at thuja, for example, which is an important, I think maybe white cedar perhaps in America.
I think it's the red cedar actually. Yeah, sometimes
Okay,
called
so what is red
arborvitae.
cedar then? Okay,
Yeah.
but thuja means burnt offering or sacrifice. So you can imagine maybe the settlers, the European settlers coming across and going, oh, okay, that's what they burn. We burn that wood. That's what we burn, and so maybe that's how it became to be cedars. But other than that, I don't know really.
Yeah, I guess before in many centuries past, they weren't looking at it from a botanical point of view. They were just it's a big tree. They look similar. Yeah, we burn the wood. They must all be cedars type of thing.
Yeah, but they don't even look that similar. I mean,
Mm.
that's what I thought before. That if you, in fact, we're very lucky actually that one of the stately homes near to us does have actually a Cedrus libani, a cedar of Lebanon, and so I've seen one, and they are huge, great big spreading things with like great big flat arms. Well, the junipers don't grow like that. They're almost like they've got like feathery, spindly, very different. So I don't
Mm.
think it's even that, because I wondered if it was that to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah, true. So I personally work mainly with Virginian cedarwood, but I also do have Atlas cedar, and I use that kind of as my secondary one, and I love the aroma of that. I can't get enough of that one. What about yourself? Which cedars do you tend to use for yourself and for in your practice?
Yeah, so I do use cedarwood Virginian a lot. So Juniperus virginiana. I really like cedarwood Cedrus deodara, which is a cedar, but it comes from India and Pakistan. usually. I do have Atlas cedarwood, and there are reasons not to have Atlas cedarwood, but I will explain what those are in a minute. But I do have Atlas cedarwood when I'm using it for people who've got really bad nervous dispositions, and also as like a sacred one. So I don't use it very much for like skin and things like that. But one of the reasons for not using cedarwood Atlas is it has been really over farmed and over harvested over the years. And a cedarwood, I mean, that might be another distinguishing feature that adds to it. Cedars can live to around about 1,000 years old. And so to harvest a tree and then not replace it, which is what happened in antiquity, we haven't caught up yet. So that is a dwindling amount. But having said that, the essential oil of a cedarwood Atlas is usually made from wood chippings left over from making furniture and things like that. So whilst we kind of don't want them to be using it for furniture because that's still harvesting it, at least we're not just making essential oil we're not felling a tree for the essential oil. So I feel a bit better about that. But yeah, it shouldn't be your first option to go to. But having said that, chemically, it's around about 90 to 95% sesquiterpenes. And so there's very little that compares how sesquiterpenes pass through the blood-brain barrier. So they do work absolutely within the brain, in the blood in the brain, to calm the brain. And we have, in 2015, it was proven that it would work as a very good painkiller, post-operative painkiller, because of the way that it acted on the brain. It worked on the descending pain signaling through, and there's so many different proofs that I can't even remember them. So so many different pathways. So the opioidergic, which is what we use opioids for, serotonergic, noradrenergic, and the dopamine pathways. So all of those, then also separate to that, on anti-inflammatory pathways too. So it is important, but it definitely, if you're just thinking, I just want to put it into a diffuser and I want to feel calmer, then you can use a different one. But if you've got somebody who's really poorly, like I have at the moment, who really needs that extra help with the pain killing, then Atlas cedarwood would be the better one to go for. Yeah.
So would you find your everyday cedar would be your Virginian cedarwood?
Virginian, yeah, for me, yeah.
Now, one thing I've read it once upon a time, and I can't find the study again, that the inhalation of cedar can actually help to increase levels of GABA. Have you?
Well, I would say that's certainly true. And the reason for that is because it's proven that inhaling essential oils increases levels of GABA. So even without the cedarwood, that would be true. But yes, most certainly, because also when we're talking about serotonin, the body needs serotonin to balance levels of GABA. So we know that if it will level it out, that will help. And it is the body's calming neurotransmitter. So even without looking for medical evidence, I would say that that's got to be true, I would say.
Yeah.
And it is the oldest plant medicine that we know about, actually. So it's mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which dates to around about 2100 BC. I should say 2100 BCE, before Common Era, because he talks about Noah, and also Gilgamesh himself goes off, and he goes off on a pilgrimage, and he wants to build himself a palace. And he builds this palace. He goes to the forest of cedars, which is a magical forest where gods live. And he takes some of the wood, and he builds his palace entirely from wood, and it's said that the gods are pleased. We also hear in the Bible that Noah offered an offering of cedar and myrtle to thank Noah, God for saving his life. And actually, the Epic of Gilgamesh also talks about flood as well. King Solomon, when he made his palace, his temple, that's what I'm trying to say, he made it of stone, but he covered it inside and out with cedar wood. And cedars grow so tall, so straight, so it made them really attractive commodities for the ancient world. But also, if you think about how all of those systems, opioidergic, serotonergic, noradrenergic, dopaminergic, you stand in that, you can just imagine how that level of scent would change how you felt. So you can imagine that did feel like a religious experience. And if you go to Egypt and you visit the ancient temple of Edfu to Horus, you can still see the splinters of the cedar wood on the hinges. It's still there, and it seems likely to me that many of the temples would have had cedar wood doors, because of this feeling of moving into a religious space and the feeling that God is with you and God is protecting you. But also, if you look at many different cultures, particularly Native American cultures, there's this idea that not only do gods live in cedarwood, but the ancestors also live in cedarwood. And so this idea of worshipping ancestors is a great wood, but oil to use for any kind of connection to the ancestors.
And I think, before we kind of do go into everything emotional, mental, and spiritual, the effects of this oil is just, it's an overall, it gives you that strength of a big tree in that calmingness, doesn't it? And you've been talking about how it's been used throughout history in that way.
Yeah, but so it changes the breath. So it's a very good respiratory medicine, particularly if you've got a cough. So any kind of coughs and colds, splutters, then cedarwood is excellent. And in the same way that one uses the oil, one could also burn the wood and inhale the vapors of the wood. That would be the traditional way of using it. It's also an extremely good skin healer for things like particularly allergic reactions, but also eczema, psoriasis, dermatitis. For obvious reasons, because of the way we've talked about how it affects the nervous system, anything to do with a stress-related condition, cedar would be fantastic. Because I do think that it really alleviates feelings of like negative thoughts, but also instills hope. So if somebody's really getting bogged down and you start to see it playing out on their skin, then it's an excellent one to use. Lots of evidence of how it works as an anti-inflammatory, so things like rheumatism, arthritis. You could use it in so many different ways, and it's not really it's a ecologically expensive oil, the Atlas cedarwood, but actually financially it's not. If you're going for one of the Juniperus or a Deodara that we've got plenty of resources for, it's not an expensive oil to use. Another reason why it was used in mummification and spiritual practice is not necessarily spiritual. So it's water repellent, so very good for making boats. It's insecticide, it's anti-fungicide. So all of these things that you wanted to protect the mummy from, cedarwood was really useful for that. And also lots of different kinds of pests. So, for example, I consult with a company that makes insect repellents and pest repellents out of essential oils. And particularly rodents don't like it, but reptiles don't like it. So if you've got a problem with like iguanas, for example, anything kind of lizard-like, if you put cedarwood chippings in their cage, they will go like that right up the other side because it burns their skin, but also it burns it's called their Jacob's organ inside their nose. So for snakes and things like that. So chippings on the floor is a traditional medicine to keep snakes away. And so you can see how creating magical circles to keep out all of those baddies came about.
Yeah, very much so. And I think, you know, for people who live in places like Australia where we are a little bit worried about snakes coming in, like maybe, you know, rubbing or anointing a bit of cedarwood around doorways or entrance points could be a good thing to do then.
Yes, because it's not just that they don't like the smell, they can feel the smell in the nose, they get a burning smell.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, so they've got like a special organ within there that's like a cavity, which is really, really sensitive. So like, you know how like they scent the air when they stick their tongue out, they immediately go. So yeah, very, very
Amazing.
good.
That's a good hack for a lot of Australians that are worried about snakes. Although, you know, I've
Yeah,
lived in
yeah.
the bush all my
You know,
life and seen how many. Yep.
when
Now
I
you're
first
talking about.
started,
Sorry, go
I
on.
was just going to say, when I first started training, I learned that patchouli was good for snakes as well, and I was like, is that even real? As if I'm ever going to know that. And obviously, you never know what trajectory your life's going to take. That I would actually know about those eventually. Yeah. Sorry,
Yep,
didn't
there
mean to
you go.
interrupt you.
There you go. No, I was going to say, you know, you're talking about all those kind of biblical references to cedarwood as well. Another reference that I know of is that actually, if we go back in time to when God or the Creator was actually creating the earth, he had a blueprint, and then once he actually was finished, he's like, "Well, where do I put my blueprint?" And what he did is that it said that he rolled it up and placed it within a cedar tree. And so what I love cedar for, and I found that cedarwood really came out as a really nice oil to work with, especially during COVID, because one of the gifts of cedarwood is it brings certainty into our lives. Now, sometimes we don't know why things are happening, and we're like, but if we can find some reassurance that this is all part of the plan, this is how it's meant to go, there's a greater picture to that, that can settle us. So we've already talked a little bit about how physically it's definitely calming, but I think when we have that, you know, lots of things have happened to it in our lives. And we look back at like, why did I break up with my first ever partner? Well, thank God we all did, probably. And you know, why do I not work at that place? And why did I lose my job? Everything is part of a plan, but when we're going through that, it can be quite shaky. And cedarwood's a really great comforting oil to physiologically calm us, but also on a more spiritual level, go, maybe this is just part of the plan. And as I connect with cedarwood, I connect with the bigger picture, the bigger plan, and can find more peace in that and more comfort in that rather than kind of making this a tumultuous time.
I think that's really salient. And do you in Australia have the program Welcome to Wrexham?
Not that I know of.
Okay, so Welcome to Wrexham is about Wrexham football team, and what's interesting about Wrexham football team is Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhaney own it. So it's tremendous. I'll give it a bit of a plug. It's on Netflix. It's one of my favourite programs to watch because it's a bit about football, but mainly it's about the people in the community. And in this week's episode, they were talking to the trainer, the coach, and he was talking about the qualities of a successful player, and particularly a successful goalkeeper, I guess, in the context of where it was in the program. And he was saying that one of the most important qualities is one's ability to be able to deal with uncertainty. And I thought that really kind of resonated with me, because I was like, you know, I deal with people who are nervous all of the time, but that jump from to be successful, one has to learn to be comfortable with uncertainty. It is really quite right. It's a cedarwood quality, isn't it? Of just I think if you like look at a cedarwood person, yes, they're big blokes usually, but they just kind of, they're not showing off. They're not like like taking over the conversation. They're just the quiet blokes in the background that probably, if you went, I've got a problem, I know who I'll talk to. You know, it's those kind of quiet, dependable types that you can really rely on. It's a very cedarwood thing.
Very much so. It's interesting that you said, that obviously you use the word community, and that's another word that comes up for me when I'm talking about cedarwood as well. I find that it's often referred to as being a solar connected tree, and we'll talk a bit more about astrology in a moment. But I find that it can really help to ground you and give you confidence in the public arena when you're out in the world and around people. And I find this is a really beautiful oil for anyone who does feel a bit of social anxiety or has kind of this feeling that when I am in a community, I lose myself. Now, that may be, a community group or a family, but sometimes we just feel like in a small gathering, we go out with friends and we lose who we are. And like you were saying about the seated personality, it does give you that strength you may not be the loudest, but you don't need to lose who you are. And for people that maybe a Libran or someone who finds that their personality melds with other people's, cedarwood can be really great for helping you stand on your own 2 feet, to take your place up in the forest of the world, and to actually relish and enjoy getting out there in the world. As I'm talking, I'm kind of thinking how I quite like juniper berry essential oil for helping empaths who get overwhelmed, to help them metabolize the poison of the emotional energy they take on. And now I'm kind of thinking of the wood of the Virginian cedarwood, being a juniper as well, can also help empaths to stand tall when they are out in the world rather than hiding from the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, entirely. And it goes back to this protective circle,
Yeah.
that you just, it is a cleansing oil. It's a purification oil. On that note, so I saw a smashing meme on Facebook yesterday, and it said, walk into a room as if the ancestors sent you. And I was like, that's a cedarwood statement.
Very much so. Very
you
much
know,
so.
I've got things to say. You might not understand them, but I know there's wisdom in them. Do you know? Walk into the room like the ancestors sent you. Yeah.
And I found in such as Celtic mythology, where they kind of talk a lot about all the big trees and that type of thing. Cedar has often been attributed to being connected to the sun. So I think it's not only just about that quiet confidence of being able to step into a room or be in a gathering or amongst a community, but also that your light doesn't get dimmed by when you work with cedarwood. It really helps you to shine your light in that kind of gloating or non-egotistical way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, entirely. The ancient Egyptians, it's cedarwood kind of comes up almost in every myth. If you look for it, it's there, particularly involved with Osiris. And I'll try and explain ancient Egyptian myth as easily as I can, because we don't want a long video. But so the reason that the pharaoh was revered was that he was a divine being on this earth. He was a living god, and that was because he would join with Osiris during the night, and he and Osiris would travel in the solar barge through the Amduat, which was the land of the dead. And it would meet with Osiris, with the sun god Re, and ensure that the sun rose again each day. And the solar barge, there's lots been found around temples, around pyramids, and they're always made of cedar. So these cedarwood barges were involved in ensuring that tomorrow's another day. That idea of hope and and reliability, that the sun would turn up, because that's a big thing in sun mythology. This idea that you can pretty much work out where the sun's going to rise, where the sun's going to set, where it will be at lunchtime. That's how you set the clock. But the moon, of course, is unpredictable. We're not really sure where she'll rise. We're not really sure, unless we're keeping track, what she'll look like. What colour will she be? Will she be full? Will she be crescent? But the sun just is the sun. You can just depend on it to be. And again, that's cedarwood.
Yeah. I guess that word of certainty really sticks nicely with cedarwood, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When it comes to chakras, I find this one a really great base chakra one. I love to work with it. A lot of people find, the base chakra is about feeling safe. It's about feeling secure, that sense of steadiness and able to adapt to change. And cedarwood can work really well with bringing us certainty during times of uncertainty. But I also find cedarwood a really nice oil just to help simplify our lives. A lot of the time, our modern life is there is so much we have to get done or feel imposed that we have to get done. And cedarwood is a really nice one to start working with, meditating with, using in your life when you just go, how do I simplify here? What needs to go? What am I doing? What running around is excessive or unbeneficial for my overall main well-being? So in that base chakra manner, it really is great in kind of bringing that groundedness and bring that sense of safety and security by just cutting off the excess.
I agree with that entirely. I think base chakra, but I also think crown chakra, it's a really important spiritual connection oil.
Yeah, that makes sense. And astrologically, would you link it to the sun, or is there another planet that sings out to you as well?
Well, I think I'd have to also say Pluto, because of the connection with the underworld and the afterlife and the dead and the ancestors. But also, if somebody, I think that I haven't said it, and perhaps I should. It's a really good oil for sexuality, not necessarily like the headiness of things like jasmine, patchouli, but it's very good for if you can't focus because your mind keeps going off on negative tangents. So that might be just you thinking about the washing up, or you might also be thinking about something that is like, oh, I don't do sex. Do you know what I mean? All of those things are really well helped, and those are Plutonian too. So, and also, again, didn't say it, but you could use it for things like genitourinary infections. It wouldn't be the first one I'd go for. Funnily enough, I would go for cypresses and junipers. So that probably says cedarwood Virginia is probably better than Atlas. But UTIs, again, that's Plutonian as well.
So as we kind of wrap up this episode and people may be inspired to, I need to go get some cedar, what would you recommend everyone grab some Virginia for their everyday kind of cedarwood and then maybe some Atlas for those special occasions? Would that kind of be your main cedarwood repertoire?
Yeah, I would say go shopping and buy either Virginia or Deodara. If you have a situation where you have got somebody who is in acute pain, or you really do want to use it as a special, like anointing oil, and it's not for anything else, or you've got somebody who's got really acute anxiety, not just nervousness, anxiety, then you go and buy the Atlas. But don't just have it for the sake of having it. There are special reasons to use it.
And I guess at this point, you did mention it before that not only cedarwood, but, sandalwood, hinoki, a lot of our wood oils are the byproduct of furniture or lumber industries. But it is always important to kind of look at where your oils are coming from because, yes, we want to have our oils, but we don't want to be chopping down trees and ruining forests just so we've got essential oils in our home. So making sure that it's coming from a good source. A lot of places are, a lot of governments are managing forests and only a certain amount of trees are coming down or so on. That's what you want to look for with your essential oil company, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think probably cedarwood is probably the most cautionary tale. So in the time of the ancients, I think it was Pliny wrote that the cedars of Lebanon, that forest was stretched for miles and miles and miles. When it was measured in 1880, there were only 20 cedars of Lebanon left.
Wow.
So now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's a really strong reminder that those trees will not recover. So it's not just 1,000 years of history in one felling. Do you really want to take responsibility for that? So yeah, don't just grab the Atlas cedar for no reason. It's an emergency thing or a sacred thing.
Very much so. Well, thank you very much for joining us for another week of Fellowship in Essential Oils. I hope we've delighted you and given you a few extra facts about cedarwood so you're inspired to use yours again. We'll be back next week when we explore another one of Mother Nature's beautiful gifts. Until then, take care.
Bye-bye.